dragons whisper and the dungeons moan. Lost in a story, no king on his throne. Just me and the dice and the seeds I've sown.
Welcome back to the table. This is Solo Dungeon Crawlers, Solo Roleplay Podcast, and I'm Tom. And in today's session, I'll be returning to my OD&D campaign, which I call The Castle of the Quest. And my party, the Questing Knights, have been exploring the village of Homlet. And for those who don't know, this is a first edition adventure module written by the man himself, Gary Gygax. So as I play through this content, I'll be refining my solo approach to pre-written modules. Therefore, lots of stuff, hopefully, that you can take away for use in your own games if you ever fancied playing a pre-written module solo. So, let's get back to the game. So, continuing where I left off in the last Village of Homlet session, the Questing Knights are still exploring the village and trying to acquire as much information as they can. And of course, they've heard that the old moat house is full of monsters and treasure, and was an outpost for the Temple of Elemental Evil. And as the priest at the church, Calmert, explained, the servants of the Temple of Elemental Evil made Homlet and the lands for leagues around a mockery of freedom. And while the Temple of Elemental Evil was in action, commerce ceased, crops withered, there was pestilence, but the leaders of the Temple of Elemental Evil got a bit too cocky, a little bit too proud, and they started trying to invade lands to the north. This resulted in a huge battle, and ultimately, the Temple of Elemental Evil was defeated and destroyed. But the party are looking to adventure in the old moat house, clear out some monsters, and hopefully acquire some valuables as well. And they have managed to get a basic amount of equipment. So, continuing the exploration, the Questing Knights have made their way back down into the main part of the village, and then veered east from there to arrive at the Welcome Wench again, and then headed past the blacksmiths and the Elders' Manor House. And the party come to a barn-like house with a wheel nailed to a post. And this is the local Wheel and Wainwright. And the main part of this structure is the barn, where the wheelwright builds and repairs carts and wagons. And there are 2 helpers assisting this local artisan. A small child sits on a stool, observing the work from outside an attached side apartment. And a small amount of friendly conversation quickly reveals that the man's wife is dead and between him and his two nephews, they run the business and look after his daughter too. So Drago attempts to pry a little further here, but these folk are cautious and seem none too keen on the halfling. Continuing on then, further along the road, the party come to a newly constructed building which has a sign depicting a saw and hammer. And the man here seems very busy working on his barrel staves, and the party decide to avoid a stop and chat on this occasion. They come to a new house set off from the road by a low stone wall. And this house looks recently built, and by the look of the new castle being constructed in the low hillocks, this is likely the house of the stonemason working at the site. On the south side of the road there are double fieldstone walls filled with earth, the beginnings of a smallish castle being built around a tall tower atop the low mound. The workers have dug up deep trench lines about 10 feet wide and as deep down to a hard clay, and it can be seen that they are in the process of mortaring the foundations of the wall that they will build above. Work has barely begun, but the outlines of bastions, towers, a gatehouse and a keep can be noted, and the keep is atop the second hillock, and considerable excavation has taken place, the earth from this digging going to use in the walls around the hall. Some dressed stone blocks are visible, evidently having been carted in from elsewhere, as they are not similar to local stone. Some conversation with the labourers reveals a rumour amongst them that the residents of the tower gained considerable treasure in killing a green dragon which preyed in the Cron Hills to the west. Further along the road they come to the two-storied tower, and this structure is some 55 feet high, with a smaller tower rising inside the greater at about 35 feet above the ground. There's a curving flight of stone stairs winding up to the entrance, and the stairs terminate at a landing about 10 feet above the ground. The outer door of the tower is already lowered to form a bridge to a stone landing beyond, and there are a number of arrow slits around the tower, and it has a splay around the base to about 6 feet in height. The lower and upper battlements are machicolated, and the merlons being pierced for archery as well. 2 men-at-arms watch from its roof. And as the party scan the tower, 2 men emerge from the entrance and begin walking down the stairs. One, carrying a battle axe and shield, is dressed in shining chainmail, and the other is finely robed and has a high-collared cloak and a soft cap sitting loosely on his head. The party observe the work for some time, and eventually the 2 men approach and offer a greeting. They introduce themselves as Rufus, a stout myrmidon, and Byrne, an achieved warlock. A casual conversation ensues, in which the party learn that these men came to Homlet some 3 years ago, and have had some considerable success in adventuring, including the defeat of a large bandit force which had plagued Verbobonk. The party are definitely going to want to try and recruit these two. They have no assurances to offer though, so the basic chance starts at 0%. Ilara Nightshade will try to negotiate something. She will get a 15% bonus for human-to-human relations, nothing for charisma, but will offer a 50% share of treasure. So there is a 65% chance of acceptance. So Rufus and Byrne join the party. So the party are now in a much greater position. I think they're ready to take on the old moat house. I will rule it takes Rufus and Byrne about an hour to make their preparations, and in the meantime the party are welcomed into the main hall to wait, and they take seats in comfortable chairs that line the walls whilst admiring the tapestries, the decorative shields and arms and trophies, while a guard stands by on duty, keeping a close eye on the questing knights. So before long, Rufus and Byrne return, and they all venture out of the tower and follow an overgrown track situated just a little further east, past the tents and wattle huts belonging to the labourers at the construction site. The track leads off into the rugged hills and tangled scrub above the village, and 2 or 3 miles along they see the ruined moat house, a warning post of the destroyed Temple of Elemental Evil. There is a murky pond just off the north side of the road. Will the party investigate? I'm going to give this a 50-50 chance. So the party decide to leave the pond be for now, and they move straight up to the rotting drawbridge. So when the moat house was taken, part of the drawbridge was battered through and men crossed on planks to gain access to the inner gates. The chains of the drawbridge were broken and it fell, and it has remained thus since. It's strong enough to bear a man, but there is a 50% chance that any horse crossing it will break through and injure a leg. So the question is, will mounted men-at-arms dismount, or will they cross on horseback? And I will rule that there is a 4 in 6 chance that they will dismount. But it seems that Leoric and Roland are not the wisest of mercenaries. So Leoric crosses first, and with a very loud creak followed by an even louder snap, the drawbridge is compromised in part, and Leoric's horse slips through and injures a leg. The party manage to rescue the poor creature and pull it to safety, and it takes some time to bind the leg, settle the horse, and tether all of them before attempting the drawbridge again. and that leg will need looking at properly later. So this time the party carefully crossed the rotting bridge on foot, coming to broken gates on the other side. One of the gates is hanging open on one great hinge. The other is splintered and hauled, but still in position, wedged and shored, closed from inside. So without giving too much away, I want to briefly cover an important mechanic I'll be using to determine if a character decides to investigate something that is described in the adventure's text to reveal something that's hidden. So, to avoid metagaming, I simply treat this as a check to see if a secret door is noticed, i.e. elves have a 2 in 6 chance, and it would make sense then that everyone else has a 1 in 12 chance, as elves are 4 times better at finding secret doors than other character types, i.e. they can find one when actively searching 4 in 6 times, versus in contrast the usual 1 in 6. And I allow just 3 attempts at a search to keep things manageable. So I'll have 3 characters examine the immediate area. So let's say Hilda Stoneheft, Brother Bart and Drago the Stout. And having 3 characters increases the chances from 8% to about 22%. But to further increase these chances, a full turn must be spent searching a keyed area, in which case chances increase to 4 in 6 for elves and 1 in 6 for everybody else. So whether spending a full turn or not, the check is limited to 3 attempts, 1 attempt per character. And sadly, on this occasion, nobody notices anything worth investigating in this current area. And from here there are 7 possible directions the party can take, so I'll roll a d6 to decide. So the party decide to move along the inner south wall, and they follow it to the east until they come to a door. And I've given them a couple of turns of grace, but now the party are within the confines of the moat house. I will make the first wandering monster check for this adventure. And in the village of Homlet there is a 1 in 12 chance in the old moat house every other turn. And lucky for them, they are not disturbed at this point by any wandering monsters. So I'm going to have Leoric, Rufus and Hilda step forward to force the door. And they manage it without too much trouble. But beyond the door is a giant snake, a huge adder over 12 feet long. Has anybody been surprised by this? So both sides have been surprised in this instance, which means nobody gets any rapid reaction, dictated by the fact that surprise has occurred. The snake is currently 30 feet away, so it's coiled on a huge pile of rubble in the southeast corner of the chamber. So, first round of combat here. the party win the initiative, and they are going to counter move. So in other words, they're not going to move forward, they're going to stay still and offer pass-through fire on this gigantic snake. So Nyx is going to fire her light crossbow. Byrne will use his very useful wand of magic missiles. Very glad to have been able to recruit Rufus and Byrne into the party, because some of their equipment will definitely come in handy, I would have thought. So the snake slithers towards the party, and it makes it about 7.5 feet, and the missiles will be released when it's about 15 feet away, because that's the moment when it comes in range of the magic missile, and it means that also this is just about when the light crossbow gets doesn't get penalised for long range. So that's combat round 1. The party stay stationary and they'll let this snake slither towards them for a round. So combat round 2 now. The snake wins the initiative this round. It continues slithering, and the party hold until the range is right, and then 3 glowing darts fly from Byrne's hand and strike the creature. Oof, for 10 damage. So the monster it's been reduced from 23 hit points, so it has 13 hit points left. Nyx needs a 14 to hit with a quarrel, but she gets a +1 for her high dexterity score. But it's still a miss. So the party will now melee with the creature, and space will allow 6 characters to fight. So Roland, Hilda, Bart and Drago all need 12s to hit. oh dear. A natural 1 and a 2 and a 9, but luckily a 15 as well. So Sister Galantia bonks the thing right on its flat scaly head with her mace, causing 3 points of damage. So it's now down to 10 hit points, and this causes the scaly abomination to hiss wildly. So I'm going to check morale for the creature to see if it remains. And for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to treat the snake as heavy foot, giving it a requirement of 7 on 2d6 to remain. So it's going to keep fighting, but it's enraged rather than fearful. So I think it's fair that Leoric and Rufus will also need to pass a morale check as well to dictate how they react to this monstrosity. So Leoric turns tail and runs. It seems his employment is over. So I'm going to rule that he will wait outside with the horses and desert at the first opportunity when the party return to Pylea, because he's in strange lands with no obvious way of getting home if he deserts at this point. Roland needs a 14 to hit, and he needs to make this blow count for 2 now. So he thrusts his spear, but it just bounces off the creature's scaly natural armour. So the creature will attack now, and it's going to attack Hilda, and it only needs an 8 to score a hit. 11. So Hilda raises her shield to try and fend the snake off, but its sharp teeth find a way through her defence and sink into her shoulder like a pair of daggers. So 3 points of damage, and Hilda must also save versus poison to minimise any further damage. A natural 20 will definitely do it, but a save will still mean she takes 2 more points of damage. So as a hero, Hilda gets 4 hit dice. So she's now down to 11 hit points. So just for context, I'm not using the alternative dice system. All damage rolls are on d6s. All hit dice are on d6s. So I'm sticking to the original hit dice progression in Men and Magic. So, third round. And the snake wins the initiative again and will attack Hilda once again. Oh. So it must have a taste for her flesh. But this time she manages to deflect its sharp, dripping fangs with her shield. So again, attacks from Rufus, Galantia, Drago, and Hilda, needing 12s. It's worth mentioning that Hilda gets a +2 to her attack rolls because of her 18 strength. Wow. So 4 hits scored. And these have got to be some of the best D20 rolls I've made in a while, I think. And I hope my luck hasn't run out. So I got an 18, a 14, a 13 and a 14. So all of them hit. Hilda also gets a +3 on her damage rolls. So as the creature was trying to take its meal out of Hilda, the party are able to surround its scaly head and hack at it before it can withdraw, and in turn Hilda pushes a spear through its eye to finish it off. The giant adder is dead, and the combat is over. So, first combat of this adventure is now over, and looking at the room, the snake must have crawled up the rubble, spilling out into the moat in the southeast corner, and it's found a nice little lair here that can hole up after doing its hunting outside in the wilds around the moat house. And naturally the party are going to take a full turn to search for anything of value. So 3 characters will perform the search. And I'm just going to pick one at random, Samwise. Shadowstep. He discovers a jewelled dagger in the litter of the monster's resting place, which looks to be worth about 850 gold pieces. So an excellent find. So as Leoric has tucked his tail between his legs and fled the scene, I've updated the marching order so I don't forget. So now we have Galantia, Rufus and Roland up front, and then Drago, Byrne and Hilda on the second rank. The third rank is Thilindra, Ilara and Nyx. 4th is Dorin, Bart and Samwise, and Helena is going to take the rear. And that is all I have time for in this session. The first battle is over, which was exciting. Nobody is dead. Hilda hasn't been harmed too badly. So I think because they've got this dagger, there's a good chance they're going to want to keep exploring these ruins, and they're not going to turn and leave and seek the safety of the village again just yet. They have their work cut out by the looks of it, but there are spoils to be had, so they're going to persevere. They're going to crack on. So join me next time to find out what happens next in this adventure. And I'm just going to say, as I always do, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next session. Have a great week, everyone. Goodbye.